The surly teenager, Imbecilus Britannicus, threatened to run away from home. "I don't need you stupid smelly parents telling me what to do," he pouted. "Well, how about I raise your weekly allowance?" said Father David. "That way you'll have far more to spend on all that junk food and pornography that I know you enjoy so much. And I'll tell you what, how's about I chuck this into the bargain too? We'll stop inviting our friends, Mr. and Mrs. Ahmed, round for Sunday lunch, and your mother will break off her friendship with Yelena and Magdalena. I do know how much you hated them, and I'm really sorry you had to enjoy their company, darling." Really?" purred Imbecilus. "Yes, really," said Father David emphatically. "But let me just run it by your Uncle Juncker first." "But why?" whined Imbecilus. "Just give me the money and tell those horrid smelly people with funny voices to go away." "I'm afraid it's not that simple," explained Father David. "I really wish it were. You see, your mother and I go back rather a long way with your Uncle Juncker, and he's given us an awful lot of money over the years." "Well, make sure he says yes, okay?" "Okay," said Father David weakly. A little while later, Father David came back grinning from ear to ear. "I did it!" he exclaimed. "You'll get that raise in your allowance, and Uncle Juncker's promised to let us make our own decisions for a while." "Okay, but what about Mr. and Mrs. Ahmed and Yelena and Magdalena?" "Ah," said Father David sheepishly, shifting his weight from one foot to another. "There's just a slight problem there, you see. He didn't say anything about Mr. and Mrs. Ahmed, but apparently Yelena and Magda have to stay. Oh, and Matchek too. Otherwise, he won't be giving us any more money. And also, he and his friends have threatened to stop buying my classic British bullshit. I honestly don't think I'll be able to sell it to anyone else. Sorry, son." "Well, I'm off then. Bye." "No, wait! Come back!" But Imbecilus stormed off to his room and slammed the door shut. Over the next few days, Imbecilus sulked in his room. He really wanted to leave, but he had doubts. Would he be able to go it alone? He decided to visit his favourite uncles for a bit of expert advice. His creepy Uncle Nigel was especially helpful. "You can do it, boy," he encouraged. "You got a good head on your shoulders, a head full of dreams, and a damn good arse." Sorry, what?" "Oh, forget that last bit. Just your Uncle Nigel getting carried away in his old age. But you get the gist." "Yes, you know he's talking sense," piped in Uncle Michael. "And I'll tell you what," added Uncle Boris. "We'll club together and give you £3,500 a month on top of your usual allowance if you do the courageous thing and go your own way." "Really?" asked Imbecilus excitedly. "Yes, really!" the three wise uncles exclaimed in unison. So an emboldened Imbecilus went back to Father David and told him his decision. "I've decided to leave," he proclaimed. A concerned Father David told him, "Well, if you do, know that I'll have no choice but to cut your allowance in half. I can't afford to be so generous now that your Uncle Juncker won't be buying my British bullshit anymore." Imbecilus gave a contemptuous snort. "Humph, I don't need your stupid money anyway. I'll make my own. And anyway, someone's offered to give me £3,500 a month." "Really? And who might that be?" "My uncles Boris, Michael, and Nigel." Father David let out a loud laugh. "Good luck with that," he said. "Don't know what you mean by that," slurred Imbecilus. "But either way, I'm off. And don't expect me to come back, ever." Father David sighed, defeated. "Very well, as you wish. And you know what? I'm going to wash my hands of this. I'm going to wash my hands of you. Don't think you can come crawling back at any time. I've done my best to be a good father to you, and this is how you repay me, you stupid little brat. From this day on, I'm no longer your father." As Imbecilus trotted off into the sunset, he saw an ominous storm cloud on the horizon. Meanwhile, Imbecilus's mother, Teresa, was furious with Father David. "This is so typical of you men, isn't it? Mess everything up and leave the women to pick up the pieces. Do you honestly think Imbecilus can look after himself out there? Of course not. So of course it falls on me to take care of him. Thanks, David. Thanks a lot." Imbecilus went to inquire about flats to rent, then dropped in on his favourite uncles to collect his first promised payment of £3,500. Uncle Nigel looked sheepish. Ah, the thing is, you see, I never said anything about 3,500 a month. Imbecilus turned to Uncle Michael and then to Uncle Boris. Don't look at us, said Uncle Boris. It's true, you know. We said nothing about £3,500. Or if we did, I think you must have got the wrong end of the stick. Taken our words out of context, or something like that. Yes, offered Uncle Michael. But just think, at least you're free now. Uncle Nigel paused, then on a silent cue from Uncle Michael, added, Viva Imbecilus Britannicus! Free at last! Uncle Boris laughed. I thought you hated foreign words, Nigel. Why not say long live instead? Uncle Nigel offered a coy smile. Ah, just a little indulgence of mine. Your wife, was she just a little indulgence too? Quipped Uncle Michael. Yes, that she was, said Uncle Nigel, smiling. The three wise uncles began to chuckle and slap each other on the back. Hello? Hello? I'm still here, you know, implored an exasperated Imbecilus. Hello? Hello? He shouted. But his three favourite uncles didn't even look at him, and began moving into the drawing room to smoke expensive cigars and drink brandy. I hate you all! Screamed Imbecilus, but his uncles didn't even flinch. So, out of cash and out of luck, Imbecilus Britannicus returned to the estate agents, but found he could only afford a squalid bedsit in the seedy part of town. There he waited for days on end, singing the national anthem obsessively over and over again. He prayed to St. George to bring him some money, but none came. Then he remembered his kindly uncle Kazuki in Japan, who sent a generous monthly allowance. Kazuki was surely Imbecilus's final hope, and so he waited. Meanwhile, Imbecilus's mother, Teresa, was being forced to jump through hoops to secure money for him. Uncle Kazuki had been outraged on hearing of Imbecilus's behaviour, and wrote in a letter to Teresa that he had done a great dishonour to the family. Consequently, Uncle Kazuki would no longer be sending the monthly allowance. But Mother Teresa flattered Uncle Kazuki, claiming that Imbecilus always spoke about him in the most reverent tones, and adored him above any other member of the family. On the day that he ran away, he said to David and I, "Why can't you be more like my wonderful Uncle Kazuki?" She lied. In addition, Teresa offered to come to a special arrangement with Kazuki, one that would definitely make everything worth his while. Uncle Kazuki was most pleased. And so when the first check arrived from Japan, Imbecilus was absolutely jubilant. He immediately moved into a nicer apartment, then went out on the town to celebrate. I won't go into detail, but let's just say the night involved red lights and white lines. Having received this check, Imbecilus felt vindicated. He'd been right all along, and silly Father David and Mother Teresa had been wrong. So reader, our story ends with Imbecilus Britannicus having learned absolutely nothing, either about himself or about how the world works. Meanwhile, across the pond outside Imbecilus's apartment complex, another unfortunate character named Ignoramus Americanus had recently become best buddies with a local bully named the Donald. Ignoramus had been frustrated after he lost his job at the candy shop, and angry at a boy named Jose for stealing his girlfriend. He became friends with the Donald after he promised him a new job at an even bigger candy shop, said he would put a brick through the window of Mr. and Mrs. Khan's house, and would punch Jose in the face. Rumour has it that Imbecilus's discredited creepy Uncle Nigel had also been hanging out with the Donald. Meanwhile, Mr. and Mrs. Ahmed, Yelena, Magda, Matchek, Mr. and Mrs. Khan, Jose, and many others like them have been made to feel unwelcome and unsafe in their own communities. Well done, Imbecilus Britannicus, and well done, Ignoramus Americanus.